And thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
No problem, man. I disclaimer, as I already told Scott, man, I'm not that interesting of a guy, but hey, if I could help out, whatever.
I think he's about to find out he's a lot more interesting than he thinks.
I don't know about that, man. Yeah, maybe in a bad. I'm interesting. I'm like Rain Man, interesting.
There you go. You're just ahead of your time.
Yeah, something like that, man. Way behind in life, but ahead of my time. Like, anyway.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Autopilot On Podcast. Got another great episode for us today. We have a guest, Vince, a good old buddy of mine, and of course John is back with us. So yeah, guys, let's get going.
All right.
So Vince, thanks for coming on the pod, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. So just give the listeners and viewers just like a kind of a quick overview of your flying background and like, your story from, basically from flight school till now.
Yeah, so it's actually I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I've had kind of a turbulent, like, aviation's kind of been like a really like roller coaster ride for me, and it's quite often that I get approached by people, not quite often, but a couple times a year, saying, "Hey, wow, cool! I think my kid wants to be a pilot, this, and that." And I said, "Hey, if you see them playing with like airplanes, him or her, whatever it is, or whoever it is, like keep your eye on that, man, because I don't know anybody that flies that hasn't dreamt about it their entire life, right?" So having said that, I was like that kid, man, and I had this kind of like interesting upbringing with my mother, who was like, let's just say she had her own unique set of issues, right? So at a very young age, man, like I was like probably like 6 or 7 years old, like building models, those testers kits, right? And I had built everything, and I could name every single airplane, man. F-16 Fighting Falcon, B-25, B-52, F-15. I mean, I had them all, man. And like, it was kind of like my escape, in life. Again, like there's some stuff going on with my mom, and so I mean, at a very young age, like I definitely had that like aviation itch, and I wish like my family would have looked out for it, looked out for it for a while. And it was interesting. So I'm gonna tie everything together, but it's funny because I remember like at about 8 years old, my mom was really interesting. Like character. She's not alive anymore, but she's like she was probably like a little bit bipolar. And I remember like I'm a hyper observant person, and this started when I was a kid because I could like hear the tempo of the high heels coming into the house after work and how the door opened, and if it was a quick tempo or the key slammed down. Building models and stuff was part of my escape. And I remember one time, and or not one time, but there was a period in my life where I learned to kind of like deal with her episodes by kind of shutting down, and it was like and it was weird because I remember the exact time it happened. She came in and like literally just went DEFCON 5 on me, and I just like shut it down, right? Like I just went stoic or whatever, blanked out or whatever. And it was like the first time I felt power, like a way to sort of control the situation, And
How
then
old were you at
what's
that
that?
time? How old were you when that happened?
I was about 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, probably around 7 or 8. Yeah. And then this one time, or there's a second time, there's numerous occasions, dude, but there's this one time she came in and just went DEFCON 5 on me, right? And I was just like, but by that time I had kind of like somewhere in like my adolescent brain, I had figured out like, okay, if I just shut down and don't give her attention, like don't entertain it, like we'll be good. And I had, again, all my models, I had put them all together, glued them, like painted them all. Some of them I painted, I figured out a way to paint camouflage on some of the fighter jets. And I just completely ignored her and just shut down, turned my back, just sat there like almost like in a Buddhist position. And she came in and smashed all my models, dude. Like
Oh,
just went ballistic, dude. I was like,
dang.
yeah, yeah. I mean, smashed them all. And then we had like in the back of our house, we had this like detached garage that had like a lot of furniture and stuff. And so like it was kind of a mess back there, but I found like an old lamp and built like an old fort. Not a fort, but like there was like a desk, a couple milk cartons or whatever. And I had like made a little desk out of a piece of wood, and I was trying to glue my models back together, and they were just decimated, man. And I never thought about aviation. Yeah, I never thought about aviation again. And it wasn't until like after I graduated from college, I came back. So I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, but so I was born and raised in the Silicon Valley. So went to school in Southern California, out in Fullerton, graduated, came back home, worked my first corporate job, took off to Japan after that. I've been involved in like judo, basically contact sports my entire life, jiu-jitsu, judo, etc. Was at that corporate job for about 9 months, went to Japan, Had a great time there, competed, came back, and then actually started my own company. And this was like in 2006 when I came back. So I just got the company up and running. We're profitable. At one point, I had $55,000 like cash in my bank, not in the business account. And then the economy just went
Tanked. Oh,
dumped, dumped. I mean, like in a time span of weeks. And it was interesting because like at the time that I started the company, I was working on my private pilot's license. And so I was just like, it's kind of one of these moments. I mean, the economy dumped. I bought a house, actually a really nice condo. Like, I mean, it was like everything was going great. And I was just like, you know what? I just kind of had this talk with myself because I lost the condo and I was like literally like homeless for a while, sleeping out of my car. And I was just like, you know what, dude, you spend all your money flying. You're making all this money and then you spend it flying whenever you can, just hopping in a 172, flying around the Bay Area. Like, why don't you just like become a commercial pilot? Started looking into it, and it's kind of like the traditional route. Like, okay, I could be a CFI, the exact thing I told myself was like, dude, a lot of these CFIs are kind of poor, but like, hey, if you're not going to make a lot of money, at least you could do something that you enjoy. So ended up not going the CFI route. Went to Northtown Aviation in where was this? It was in Bullhead City, Arizona. Got my commercial pilots like yeah. I went to like one of these intensive like it was a Part 61 school, but it was like 1 month. I got my commercial single engine IFR and then commercial multi. That's actually where I met Abby.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So I don't know if John,
Abby's a
if you know the
mutual
story.
friend of ours. Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar.
No,
Okay.
yeah, I would. It's a side story. We'll talk about it some
Yeah,
other
so
time.
he's kind of like this eccentric Jewish guy, man. From like, it's funny because he's from Los Angeles. Originally, actually, was born and raised in like Beverly Hills. He grew up in like the 90211 or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's a super eccentric guy. He literally taught himself how to fly. Bought a 182 from a drop zone that had been rebuilt, and then flew it down to Bullhead City, Arizona, to go get flight training. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I met him like we weren't in the same like class, but we were in the same program. And so like we were there for about I don't know, it was like 6 weeks or something like that. And he's like one of these guys that like knows everybody, man. And so like we both just discussing things. Hey, I'm from Northern California, he's from Southern California, which in theory we shouldn't like each other. We should be mortal enemies, but that's a separate conversation. Same goes with you, Scott. So, anyways, like he finished like a week before I did, and then I did my commercial, my what is that, AMEL, and then like I'm on my way back from Bullhead City in my beat up like Honda Civic back to the Bay Area, which is like a 17-hour drive, something stupid like that. And I sent him like this stupid message. I was like, "Yo, man, I'm a commercial pilot, dude. I'm badass," or something stupid like that. And he replied back, "Hey, man, you want a job? You want a job flying jumpers?" Like, what is that? Like. What are your plans? I'm like, I don't have a pot to piss in, man. I just blew like every last dollar I have.
Yeah.
I bet like I don't even know if I have enough gas money to get home. Just told him, I said, let me get home. I'll call you like the next day at 11 o'clock in the morning. I said I'm about 97% sure I'll take the job, but just let me just get settled. And I called him up, and he's just like, "What do you think, man?" I'm like, "I don't know anything about the job." He's like, "You got a trailer?" And I'm like, "Nope." "You got a couch?" He's like, "Yeah, we got a couch." I said, "Cool, man. When do you need me?" So headed down to Idaho, Skydive, Idaho, which is in Star, Idaho, which is like what is that, 14 miles west of Boise. So got checked out on the 182, started flying jumpers, man. I think I logged like something like 400 hours that season in a 182.
That's a lot. That's
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
a
yeah. Yeah, it was quite a bit. But I mean, but at the same time, man, like, we were ferrying back and forth from like Star to like Twin Falls for maintenance and stuff
Really?
like that. Yeah, yeah. And then at one time, actually, Abby owned the 182 and a 152, and then he sold the 152, and then I actually ferried it to Arizona, which was kind of a
Oh,
sketchy
wow.
flight. But yeah, it was super sketchy. I got to fly over the Grand Canyon, dude. But anyways,
high
but
density altitude will kill you out there on the Grand Canyon. I've done that with a student one time. And let's just say our performance was not ideal, I guess you could say. And we didn't realize it until we were actually over the Grand Canyon. I'm like, okay, well, we're riding the updraft, so it's working, I
yeah,
guess. This isn't, quote unquote, the performance said it could do it with everything saying it. But man, when it was August and, up there, and we launched out a page, and I mean, it was not what I was expecting. So it was definitely a learning lesson. So I understand what you mean by that for sure.
It was definitely a learning lesson for me too, because at one point, like, I'm like sort of like borderline retarded at some point. So like, I planned a fuel stop. I planned a fuel stop at this airport that was like 7,000 feet above sea level, right?
In a
So
150?
I'm like, I'm just,
What
yeah.
was it, Flagstaff?
What's that?
Was it Flagstaff?
I don't remember where it was, man, but it was like right outside those large escarpments. It's not a heavily wooded area, but it's like there's a lot of trees, but they're really far apart. I don't remember where it was.
It was probably Flagstaff, something like
Yeah.
that.
So I landed this. So I'm coming in to land at this. I'm just a smooth descent, nothing big. I go and do all my checks. I put the mixture in, not think it's like, wow, wow, wow. But I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm like 7,000 feet above sea level, right? I've got like 2 hours under my belt, of like total time, it's like, I land at the airport, I gas up, and then like I take off, right? And it took me forever to get off the runway, man. And then I'm going into rising terrain, and I was just like, and then it dawned upon me, man. I was like, oh man, I'm 7,000 feet above sea level. So literally for like 15 minutes, man, I just like put in like a 1 degree turn around the airport until I got to like 1,000 feet, and then just carried on. So, anyways, so yeah, so let me try to get the story right here. So I did one season with Skydive Idaho. And then I went to this drop zone outside of White Sands, New Mexico, in Alamogordo. There's a military base out there. They were flying was it a 206? So I went to go fly a 206 out there. It was just janky drop zone, man. It was, So flew a 206 out there. Somewhere along the line, made it back to California. And then by this time, I had just about like 900 hours. I actually went to like the notorious drop zone in Lodi at the time, where it was like a madhouse. I mean, they had 3 Otters, a King Air 200, a Caravan. They would, in peak season, man, they were doing like 90, 95 flights a day.
Dang.
I mean, it was just, it was just insane. Oh, dude, it was insane, man. It was absolutely insane. So I got some right seat time in the Otter there, had a little falling out with the chief pilot over something minuscule, man. He was one of these, there's a term for it. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but they call them clipper skippers.
No.
Just one of these old dogs. At the time, he was like 70 years old. He would fly. So he would fly his, what did he have? A 185? Is that right? Or is that the tail dragger?
Tail dragger, yeah.
Yeah. So he would fly his 185, like 45 minutes from the Bay Area down to Lodi. And then he'd be sitting in the plane drinking and stuff. One of these types of characters. He was like an old Air Force pilot. He claimed to have like 50,000 hours. Just one of these types of characters, man. I logged about 90 hours in the right and left seat of the Otter. Most of it was in the right seat.
Twin Otter, right?
Yeah, in the Twin Otter.
Yeah, okay.
And then there was a rival drop zone called at Bay Area Skydiving, and they had a position open for a King Air, and actually it was 256 Alpha Tango. That was that King Air that King Air 90 that crashed in Hawaii. That was the very first King Air.
Oh, that's the one.
So I got checked out in that King Air. I already had time flying jumpers, so it was like it was pretty quick for me. Flew that for a season. I think I logged about 400 hours in that one in the season. And then I got linked up with Keith. Keith, the guy that owns Skydive Midwest.
I flew for Keith. Yep.
Yeah. And so they had an incident. So Keith used to run a bunch of King Airs. And so he was leasing one of his King Airs to a drop zone in Texas, kind of outside of Austin, kind of not outside of Austin. And he had put a Facebook post up. Was one of his pilots had a prop strike in the King Air and it smoked the right engine. They had a reduction gearbox failure. Just smoked the engine on takeoff. He put an ad out looking for a King Air pilot. And I said, hey man, I got a month off. If you need basically a pinch hitter, I can come out there. So that's how I got introduced to Keith and flying King Airs. Flew there for about a month month and a half until they could find another guy. And then this is just about the time when my son was born. And so after that, I actually moved to Thailand.
What?
I didn't know this part.
You didn't know this part.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So my son's mother is actually, she's from Santa Monica. Or no, not Santa Monica. What's that city right next to it? That really Venice Beach. Venice. Thank you. So she's from Venice Beach, but she's half Thai, and so she had traveled to Thailand a couple times. She had dual citizenship, and I've been to like 70 countries in my life. And I'd been to Thailand more than like a half a dozen times. And so after our son was born, I didn't want to raise him in the United States. So I was just like, hey, what do you think about moving to Thailand? She said, yeah, let's do it. We applied for dual citizenship for him, moved to Thailand. We were going to go to Thailand and then Indonesia because I was eyeing like a low time carrier out there named Suzy Air. Are you familiar with Suzy Air?
Yeah, I know Suzy.
Yeah,
That's in the mountains, right?
what's that?
Yeah.
It's like in the mountains, correct? Where they
So
go to these places.
it's in West Java. It's in a little city called Pangandaran. But if you they actually did a YouTube series on them called "The Worst Place to Be a Pilot."
Yep, I
Damn.
watched it. That's how.
Yeah. So I got on with Suzy Air. I got hired by them, and then like out of the blue, we'd been in Thailand for maybe like 45 days. My mother gets diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Mm.
So I ended up coming back to the United States. I contacted Keith immediately because him and I are always been like really tight, and so I got into one of his King Airs, just to start picking up work again. And then shortly after that, I worked a little bit more for Abhi when he had the drop zone. He has a couple drop zones, but he opened up one in Montana, and I worked a little bit for him in Montana. And then he opened up another drop zone in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He was flying a Turbo 206. Went out there, and at the drop zone, the municipal airport in Montana, there was an ag operation. So long story short, I ended up getting in with those guys, and then did half a season flying ag, and then that ended up not working out. So after that, went
Air
back.
tractor.
I started off in the Ag Husky, and then the Weatherly, and then the Air Tractor. Yeah. I actually almost had an accident while I was out there, man, and wasn't my fault. I'm not going to get into that.
Sure.
I ended up getting fired from that job, and then seven months later, man, like when I'm the kind of person, man, when I'm done with somebody, man, I'm kind of done with them. I'll block numbers, all that stuff, man. It's like if I was done dirty, like I was, I'm just like, I'm done with you guys, man. And so after I got fired from that job, I literally hopped in my Honda and just hit the road, went all throughout Idaho, talking to like different ag operators and stuff like that. I met a lot of really cool guys, man. But like after I almost had that accident, no damage, I got a clean, flying record, nothing on my pre or anything like that. It was kind of like, again, I grew up like judo, boxing, jujitsu, and stuff like that. So I've always had this mentality of getting knocked down and just, wanting to like get back up with a vengeance. And I kind of realized on this like 2-week trip, like going everywhere in Idaho, I was like, man, I'm doing this for the wrong reasons, you know? And so, but anyway, so after that, kind of went back into flying King Airs, and I've just kind of been doing that ever since. Went back to flying jumpers, and
What do you mean by doing it for the wrong reasons? Like, what was that moment like? When was there like an epiphany? You're driving down, and all of a sudden you're just like, "This is not it. I'm going to go and do something else."
So what it was for me, dude, was like, first of all, the ag industry, I don't know how much you know about it, or the ag flying
Um,
sector, it's almost impossible to break into, man.
it's super tight knit communities.
It's like good old boy, this, that. I mean, I didn't just get hired on, but I mean, I spent like a couple years getting to know these guys, and then drinking beers, going hunting with them, hanging out at the hangar, and then they get to know you, they get comfortable with you. So, hey, man, you mind if I sit in the airplane? Sure, man. Yeah, I'll show you this, show you that. And then I think one of the breakthroughs was one day, like a storm was coming in, and the owner was gone, and the chief pilot was there, and they needed to move a couple airplanes into the hangar that were kind of like parked off. And so the chief pilot, co-chief pilot, whatever he was, he's just like, hey, man, just let's do this. You got a tailwheel rating. Let's just move it over here. And then that's when they started to get really comfortable with me. And then I'd say probably about a year after that, started to say, hey, man, I'd be interested in like, yeah, I played my cards right. I was like, hey, I'd be interested in this. This seems pretty cool. And so I came out like one winter and kind of did tryouts. To answer your question, man, I remember like the first time, man, I got into the Weatherly, did all my checks and everything, lined up on the runway, put the power to it, stick forward, put the power to it, and the tail stood up, man. And it literally felt like the first time I soloed, right?
Wow,
Yeah, it was just it was just awesome, man.
Showing some pictures of what that plane looks like.
Yeah.
So
this is awesome.
is it a radial engine?
Mm-hmm.
No way,
Yeah.
dude. You got radial engine time?
Yeah. Those radials are a trip, dude. Because you got to like turn the prop like 12 times. And then on the radials, there's no like fuel boost pump, right? No electric boost pump on it or fuel pump. So you got to kind of pump it up to like 5 psi, if I remember correctly. Fire it up, and then pop,
You're
So,
manually pumping the fuel pressure?
yeah. So you down kind of like by your left hip, you pump it up. You look at the gauge, okay, 5 psi, and then bam, 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 hear all the cylinders firing off, and then there's like enough smoke around you, So
Oh my God.
So to answer your question, man, it's like throughout that period, that season, like flying ag, it's tough, man. That sector of aviation loses a lot of pilots every year. It's always that low altitude stall spin situation. But what I learned very early on is as an ag pilot, man, you have all the odds stacked against you, man. I mean, you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is basically the middle of the sleep cycle, or you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yep.
somewhere on the latter end of the middle of the sleep cycle. You're flying all day, man, all day. It's big agribusiness. So you've got companies like Monsanto, whoever else, you know, that are supplying the chemicals, and you know, the ag industry is government subsidized. So I mean, we could be carrying a 4 or 5 thousand pound load that's worth like $10,000. You know, and you have to get your chemical on target, or that farmer's going to lose his crops. So you know, it's a lot of pressure. You're flying all day. By like 10 o'clock in the morning, man, you've blown through your lunch. You have all the odds stacked against you, man, and you have to have your head on right. You know, and I when I got fired, I got detached from that like initial passion for it. You know, and another thing about the ag sector, man, you can make an insane amount of money. Like let's say starting out, it depends on how it's structured, but starting out, you'll probably make minimum of like $2 an acre, right? You'll easily spray 50,000 acres in your first season, easily. You get 3 4 years under your belt, you might be pushing maybe $4 an acre, but you're spraying like 100,000 acres in a 6 month period. So there's a lot of money to be made, man. And you're an independent contractor, so when you get those checks, there's no taxes taken out, which is a whole other separate
Ching.
conversation. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, you know, like, you know, we all have goals and stuff in life. Like, okay, cool, I'm going to make this much money. I'm going to get a house. And when you start doing that type of flying, making that type of money, it's like, well, that goal that was way out there is now
More
like,
realistic. It's right in
it's
front of
like,
you.
yeah, it's literally like right in front of you. It's like, whoa, you know, like I said, I've been to like 70 countries in my life, not because I'm independently wealthy, but because I'm good with money. You know what I mean? I didn't graduate with any debt or any of that stuff. Paid cash basically when I went to flight training. So stayed away from credit cards and stuff like that. So after that, man, you know, I kind of just went back to flying King Airs, and then somewhere along the line, I was like, unbeknownst to me, in the middle of a separation, and I had got the call to go fly a King Air in Puerto Rico, you know, for Keith, because he was leasing one in Wisconsin and then one in Puerto Rico. And I was like, sure, dude, I'll go out there. You know, that's when the whole separation happened. And I kind of, you know, just kind of been kind of like what do you call it, man? Kind of like a nomad, you know, like a Ronin, you know, ever since.
Mm-hmm.
But,
That's why we
you
get
know,
along
it's like,
so well.
that's part of it, man. What
Yeah.
was interesting though, man, was like right when I had checked in and got hired for the ag operation, I mean, the ink was barely drying on my ATP. You know, so it's kind of like a weird road to go down. You know, you get an ATP, and then you're dealing with a lot of these ag pilots that they go from private to like commercial. You know, they're not even IFR or anything like that. And I get it, man. They want to start working, start making that money. To kind of like, I don't know, add some context to here. Everything kind of changed like when my son was born. You know, and I wish I could I wish I could show you the picture, because they're like 15 minutes they had him on that little table. 15 minutes after he was born, they had him on that little table, and I'm just looking at him, you know, and he's doing his little kid thing, you know, his newborn thing, and this little voice in my head said, I don't want to do this anymore, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, like I don't, you know, I don't want to do this anymore, you know, like this is what I want to do. I want to be a full-time dad, you know, like this is my focus now, you know, my son. So yeah, so that's that.
You know what's
Okay.
interesting is I have a buddy I'm good friends with. He's around the same age as me. I'm mid 20s, 26, 27 next month, or in a couple months. Anyways, um, we used to talk all the time. He has this big passion to go to United Airlines, and you know, with the big hiring push, it was pretty realistic too. Maybe a year ago, I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of on the edge. You know, I chose the airline I'm at because, you know, it has day trips and all of that kind of stuff, and it's great. And it has multi days too, but for the most part, it's day trips, and I really enjoy doing that. And I remember once, kind of the same thing. I don't know if it was exactly my son being on that table, but I just was kind of doing the math on once we got home, being like, how many days a month would I be technically gone on average, right, for one of those jobs?
Right,
And I
right,
started doing the math, about 16 days a month, let's say. Yeah, it can go down, right? Obviously, but let's say like 14 on the bottom end, you're gone per month.
right.
And that's 14 times 12. That's 168 days I'm gone. And then I said, okay, well, how about I do that times 18? How much is that? That's 3,024 days. let's divide that by 365. You're missing 8.2 years of their life.
Right.
And so I started doing the math like that. And kind of just like how you said, my priorities shifted where those conversations with him and I were always, I need to get to there. That's my main goal. That's the only thing driving me, being like, how much is my time actually worth if I'm sitting somewhere I don't want to be?
Right.
So everyone's different, right? Because some guys that's totally different and they have children. That's awesome. Glad to hear that. But I just want to give you my perspective because I definitely think having a son or a child in general, something in your brain chemically happens and your perspective shifts.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird how that happens. You can't really explain it until you've been through it, and then you feel conviction to go. For most part, you feel a lot of conviction to provide and do what you need to do for your family.
Yeah,
So.
and I think for me, like definitely, like your priorities change. But I think for me, like I've been on this kick for like I'm a very self-reflective person, man, and I think that again, going back to how we started, my aviation career being very up and down career, so to speak. I came to the conclusion that I got into aviation like for the wrong reasons, because it's like I constantly run into people, at least probably like every other month. Oh, it's really cool that you're a pilot. And it's like, you know,
Yeah.
I guess, like, the spread,
Dude, I feel that so much though. When people say that to me, I'm like, it's just a job. And
Well,
yeah.
it is. But when it's like you're imagining how awesome it's going to be, it's a different
Right.
perspective. And then when you're in it, you're like, oh yeah, it is. I mean, it's a great job, but it is a job, right? You have to go to work
yeah,
every day.
yeah,
So
Yep.
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it checks all the boxes, man, in terms of like, I mean, if we're honest about what we really want in society, or one of the big things, let's just say one of the big sort of egotistical bucket list things, it's like we want status. You talk to people and say, hey, or talk to kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a pilot? It's cool. And then that luster sort of wears off. And, I think like I've thought about this a lot, man. And it's like pilots we're very unique people, man. And we're in a very interesting time in aviation. We're in what I call like the boring phase of aviation. Because if you think about it, man, the guys that have been retiring for like the last 5 years, I mean, those guys came up in like the 1980s.
Totally
Like
different.
you know,
Different.
yeah, the jet age, yeah.
yeah, the golden age basically, and the guys that
Hmm.
came before them. I mean, there's obviously overlap there, but a lot of those guys were F-105 Thunder Chief lieutenants, bailing out of Vietnam. And hey, I get it, man. They had a lot of losses, but we're kind of at this interesting phase now, man, where you have to have a very unique personality to be a pilot. But one of the elements of that is like you have to be like slightly unhinged.
Yeah.
You have to have kind of like a wild side to you. And I could dovetail into like how I feel about this next generation of pilots coming out. We talked about this yesterday, Scott. A lot of them
Yeah.
I call uniform. A lot of them I call uniform chasers, man. And why? Well, I mean, because like, and again, man, there are some good guys out there. There's guys like Scott coming up. I mean, you're a little bit older, Scott, but you got guys like Spencer, and Spencer, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Spencer, right? Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
Spencer and
yeah,
I are buddies now. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if that guy's, I make a distinction between pilots and aviators, right? A pilot is a guy that flies an airplane. A professional aviator is on a completely different level. He's one part psychologist, one part this, one part that. I know we're not supposed to do this, but I compare myself a lot to somebody like Spencer. And if he's not flying, like for his job, he's flying for fun, and he has access. He
Does
has
he
access.
own a yak or something like that?
No, he doesn't, man. But
He flies
the,
that thing, right?
yeah, he flies that yak a lot. No, that belongs to the owner of the airport, but they're really good friends. I mean, they're like tight as
Okay.
a glove.
All right.
Yeah, so he lets him fly that. He has full access to that yak like all the time.
Crazy.
But I mean, if Spencer's not flying the yak, he's at Oshkosh. If he's not at Oshkosh, he's flying for work. If he's not flying for work, he's watching videos about flying. If he's not doing any of that, he's reading books about it. If he's not doing any of that stuff, man, he's making memes about aviation. And when he's sleeping, I know for a fact I would bet all my money that he's dreaming about it. you know. So, but I mean, that's the difference between somebody that's like a pilot, a guy that flies an airplane, and a professional aviator. Very high social IQ. Like sort of book smarts and street smarts. So.
Mhm. Yeah,
But yeah, and I
absolutely.
don't it worries me a lot, man. Like
Expand on the
maybe it worries
uniform
me.
chaser thing.
Well, I think and this is my own personal opinion, man. Feel free to disagree with me. Like, for a while there, I was flying traffic watch up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was like,
Oh, wow.
we would fly like airborne news reporters like all around the Bay Area in 172s, and I mean from like 5 o'clock in the morning. There was like 5 or 6 different shifts, from 5 o'clock in the morning till like 7 o'clock in the evening. And it was right at the time where the hiring boom started. So like at the time I started flying traffic watch, I was actually flying King Airs on the weekends and then flying traffic watch, basically like 4 days a week. So we'd fly around airborne news reporters, and it was right around that time. They would hire you at 500 hours, and right around that time, the hiring boom started in the airlines, and so we would have people that would come on board with 500 or 600 hours, and they had some CFI time or whatever, and then in like 6 or 7 months they'd have 1,500 hours, and they'd go straight from like a 172 to a regional, and I'm like, whoa, that's like a huge jump. I don't want to say something that's going to get me in trouble, but like there was this one girl that flew for us, right? And again, I was flying King Airs at the time, and I told her, hey man, you should go like try to fly some jumpers or something a little bit, get a little bit more experience, maybe get into a turboprop. And she got hired on with SkyWest contingent upon getting a multi-engine rating, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I was
I
joking with her
remember
one
that.
day. Yeah, and like I was joking with her one day. Well, she didn't really realize I was joking, but I was just like, "Hey," she said, "Oh, I got a class date." I was like, "Cool. Hey, main thing you got to remember is like, when you get off the ground, don't forget to pull the mixture back." She's like, "Okay, cool." And I was just like, "Oh man," I was like, and like, hey, listen, man, like, I to be fair, like pilots, we tend to be, or aviators, whatever you want to call us, like we tend to have like a higher level of ambition, and I get it, but one of the things that Scott can attest to this is like flying skydivers, man, you learn to fly the nuts off an airplane. I mean, it's just going all day, up, basically an emergency descent, back down. And like, I logged over 4,000 hours in 7 years in King Airs, and I mean, Scott, Scott was out in Puerto Rico when I was flying.
Hmm.
I mean,
That's how I met you.
I, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I don't know if I ever told you, man, when you walked up to the airplane, I was in a bad mood that day. Did I tell you that story?
No, I don't think so.
So I'll tell John and you can listen in. So, I'm out in Puerto Rico working. It's kind of cowboy country out there. And it's like, we all have professional federal licensing. We have to walk a straight line. There are regs. And I say this about aviation, man. It's like, there's the real world, and then there's the regulatory world. A professional aviator knows how to skirt that gray area, not too far, because the reality is, man, is like, and this from flying with the airlines, when it's go time, man.
Yeah.
It's storming over here. I mean, as long as it's not a hurricane, you're going, man, lightning, this or that. So I had to deal with these knuckleheads that just had zero respect for the profession, and it's like these guys, like for some reason, they don't understand. We're under federal regs here. If we get popped doing something illegal, it's on me as pilot in command of the aircraft, you know. And
My
like,
buddy got fired that way actually too.
he got fired.
Yeah, for in skydiving, they wanted him to go fly into the Mode C transponder. Was busted, and in Phoenix, it was the 30-mile ring or whatever from Sky Harbor, and the guy he's like, I don't care, just don't even don't squawk. I can't remember the terms back in the day of what that was, but go basically turn off your ADSB internet. I think out would be the right way.
Right.
And he's just like, go fly these. And the guy's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
and so, anyways, they got in this whole match. And like you said, there's cowboys in that side of the field where,
A lot.
yeah. And like, here's one thing too in aviation, a lot of the time we don't like to talk openly like this in like public settings, but this is our industry, and it's okay. It's like this everywhere else in these other industries, and I think that every pilot listening who works professionally can understand what we're saying. Like, there's some stupid stuff that occurs in this industry where you get fired for stupid things that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
And that's why in Tell Me About a Time questions on an interview for an airline or whatever, they have discretion. They've heard it all.
Yep.
So I think it's important to just put a caveat out there, like, a part of me when we talk about these things is like, oh, should we say that? But I'm like, hey man, this is just the reality of the situation,
Yeah.
and I don't think anyone else can think otherwise. So I just want to say that really quick. So sorry to steal your thunder, Vince. Go ahead
No,
and
no, no,
lead.
no. You're not stealing my thunder, man. We're riffing. It's a good conversation. But yeah, I mean, there's just like not a lot of respect, for the licensing and the profession, and like to put it into context, when I landed in Puerto Rico, I was already at like 8,300 hours with an ATP and, clean record. And I still have a clean record to this day, but I had been maybe ramp checked maybe 4 times in my life. I had like 4 formal investigations with the FISDO while I was down there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, I got clear. I'm pretty good at talking. I have a saying, there's a right way to do the wrong thing. So, you know, I'll always, yeah. Um, they tried to pop me like 4 times, man, while I was out there. First time I did a low altitude, high speed pass, over the airport. And I mean, I just ripped it, man. I mean, I ripped it, like probably came close to breaking the sound barrier, man, over the airport terminal. And obviously not that fast, but that's on me, dude. And so I saw an opportunity, and I was like, the horns came out of my head, and I was just like, suck the landing gear up, lit the burners, man, and just about 3 hours later, man, I'm on the downwind, but hooking a left base to final, and I'm kind of looking, and I see these black SUVs coming up, and I'm like, oh man, is that the FAA? And then I landed, and I could see the guys get out with these like giant badges. You ever notice how big their badges are? Like, where do they get these things, right?
Yeah.
So I taxied. I kind of rolled out all the way to the end of the runway and did a back taxi, trying to figure out in my head, okay, what was it? So long story short, one of the 4 times that they tried to pop me, it was pretty interesting, man, because we had like a rival drop zone. Like, so there's 2 drop zones on the same airport. One was a 182 drop zone, and I was at the turbine drop zone. And they hired this dickhead, Scott. You remember this, right? He caught me one day. I'm flying a King Air 90, right? And it's one of these like dodgy days. I ripped up, dropped the load, and they punched through the clouds. And then I got a summons from the FISDO, man. And it was pretty cool, because the ASI that I ran into, or that did the investigation, he was like, hey man, we need you to come down here and have a talk, blah 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 blah. And as he's talking to me, and this has been my experience with the FAA, and again, I'll tie all this together. He's like, hey, we got a video that looks a little suspect. Looks like you may have violated some VFR rules under, Part 91, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, the VFR rules. And he's kind of like walking me through it, right? It's kind of like he's saying like, hey, man, I don't want to bust you, but let's kind of walk through this. I got cleared on it, right? Anyway, so yeah, so that's been that, man. And eventually I ended up like losing my contract down there.
You had to follow me out with the DZ. That's all.
I had a fall. Yeah, I had a big time falling out with him, man. Like a big time falling out. It's just like, I'm not gonna do anything.
Those guys are characters, though. Those are not the average corporate boss you're going to find in corporate America.
Right.
Those guys are very unique people too. And so that's my perspective on them. I have never talked to them, but I've heard a lot of stories about different things at drop zones.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, it made me think more carefully on where I want to go, because I took my wife skydiving one year when we first started dating, and I made sure to go to the correct area in town versus some of the other stuff, because he worked at the other one, and he would tell me some of the stuff that they were doing in terms of just MEL stuff and whatever. Yeah. But that's weird. Like, we talked to Tom last week, and it's everywhere around the industry is just using judgment in those cases. So
yeah, and there's always like a riff in this industry, because like, basically as pilots, man, we run a business inside of a business, and everything comes down to us, man. It's like the call comes down to us, and they want to go, and it's like, hey, we can't go now. Well, we have customers here, we have this. It's like, I understand we have customers, but we're not legal right now. We've got like, I'm not gonna say anything, or say a name, but like, this was relatively recently. I worked at a place in the last few years where, like, hey, what do you think? Can we go? And I'm like, dude, you see that? It's like overcast, right? And I'm like, you see that cell phone tower? That's 300 feet, and I can't see the top of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's probably clear above it. And I'm like, yeah, somewhere in the stratosphere, it's clear.
It's always clear above the clouds.
Yeah, this is like the exact conversation that we're having, right? And I'm like, are we really having this conversation, man? I'm like, you know. So anyways, long story short, with Puerto Rico, man, the guy that I ended up training up, who I brought up from Civil Air Patrol, he was a really, really good stick. And I learned a lesson about this, man. He ended up getting offered my job after I had a falling out with him, and then he ended up losing his license because he just went buck wild.
And he did what he wanted him to do.
Yeah, because hey, man, we've all been that guy, man. You know the.
Can I chime in for a sec, and then we'll tie
Sure.
it back. So I think for the people listening and watching to understand, skydiving it's part 105, right? Regs.
That's part 91.
Part 91. There's a separate reg though for skydiving.
Yeah.
It falls under that, right? And so it's important for people, especially pilots, to understand what we're talking about here is Vince, myself, all the other jump pilots, we have to conform to FAA standards and our license requirements, right? The DZs and the skydivers don't. They're not licensed by the FAA or anybody. So they don't have this like worry about breaking regulations. To them, they're like, dude, we just want to jump. We don't care. Well, you know,
That's such a great point.
there's a hole, right? So like the hardest thing about being a jump pilot, you know, and it's like, it's such a cool job. I'm so glad I did that instead of CFI to build my hours. It was so fun. I, you know, met a lot of great people, met Vince, met tons of great people. The hardest part of your job is having the courage and the backbone to tell these people no constantly. Because every day it's going to be like, well, you know, there's a sucker hole up there. And you got to be like, dude, nope. And they're going to be like, why? I see a hole. And you're just going to have to fight them every day. So just to give some people some context to what you were dealing with.
Yeah, and I learned a lot, man. I was up in Wisconsin one time, man, and they were really pushing it. And I was flying a raised-bed King Air. Like, they needed to crank off one more load. And I'm like, yo, man, there's like 45-mile-an-hour winds, and there's a storm coming that's like 15 miles away, right? Just kept pushing and kept pushing. And I realized this about myself, which is not a good thing. I'll go to an extreme sometimes to prove a point, right? So I was just like, all right, let's go. Let's do it, right? I just got frustrated after being asked about 20 times. So I come off the runway and I'm just ripping off the runway, man, climbing at about initially 3,500 feet a minute. I go into a right turn and I see this like tall cumulus cloud, right? And I'm thinking, no big deal. I had a wicked tailwind, man. I mean, like a 50-knot tailwind. And I'm like, okay, not a big deal. And again, the wind's blowing, right? And next thing you know, like I zero G'd in my seat and the airplane just went bang, bang. And I don't know, have you ever flown King Airs, like a raceback, especially a raceback King Air?
No.
Me?
That's the
John,
no, I'm talking
okay.
about. I know you have, man.
Yeah.
You've flown. Yeah. So the raceback King Airs are a little bit tricky, man, because you have that 4-bladed propeller, which you land it completely different than you would a 3-bladed prop. In fact, if you try to land a 4-bladed King Air, four-bladed prop King Air like you would a 3-bladed prop, you're pretty much guaranteed to like slam the runway and probably crash.
Wow.
Yeah, and so point being, like in these racebacks, normally, like I mean, if you have to pull the power back, you don't go below 500 pounds of torque, right? You go below 500 pounds of torque, and it'll literally just put the brakes on you, man. Like, and so I pick up this tailwind, and my airspeed indicator gets pegged to the red line, and I'm pulling back the power. I get to around 400 pounds of torque, and at this point, I just don't. We're landing, and I'm literally pegged up to the red line on my airspeed indicator. I'm at about 500 pounds of torque, and I'm like,
where else can I go?
I'm like, what? Anyways, I ended up getting out of it after a while, but it was like 8,000, 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, and I'm just my GPS is blinking, pull up, and I'm like, it's just a really sketchy situation, but that's kind of how that's how this sector is, or can be, let me put it that way. If you don't assert your sort of authority as pilot in command, and that's on me for making a bad call.
Sure.
But
sure.
yeah, it's a lot of pressure, man, and there's just like there's a lot of division between skydivers and pilots. Again, like we basically, like, everything falls on us, and we basically run a business inside of a business. And if you kind of know how the skydiving community is, it's very egotistical, very narcissistic, and especially with the owners. Not all of them, because I've met some good owners, but like a lot of times, man, they're just, well, you don't want to fly, you don't want to do this, and it just creates like a lot of problems, man. A lot.
Yeah, they don't understand the limitations that the pilots are under, because they're not. Most of them, they're not pilots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they just don't seem to understand. It's like in flight training, we're taught, about the anatomy of an accident. It doesn't just happen. Accident or an incident doesn't just happen. It's a series of events that eventually lead up to the culmination, or you understand what I'm saying? Something bad
Swiss cheese
happening.
model, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys don't understand. It's like, dude, it's blowing 40 knots, man, which is pushing 50 miles an hour, over 50 miles an hour. You get out of that airplane under a parachute, like, yeah, I don't want to be flying in this with 1,100 horsepower,
Yeah, exactly.
But
I
anyway,
remember the first time I did a hop and pop. You were the pilot, and you
what's
didn't
that?
slow down. You didn't slow down,
Yeah.
and the second I let go, that thing ripped me right off the door. It was hilarious.
Was that in the
It
King
was,
Air?
yeah, it was in the King Air. Yeah.
Right. And with the King Airs, like, just so you know, John, like, they have a low horizontal stabilizer, right? So when these guys exit the plane, they're taught to come out in an arch. You can't do that in the King Air, man. I've had, like, not a lot of, it hasn't happened a lot of times, but I've had a number of incidences where guys have gotten out, broke a wrist on the horizontal stab,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I
it's
mean,
wicked.
they're just fast airplanes, man. I mean, you get outside, it's just like, it's just like, so. But anyways, I have
Trying to hang on
tons of
with this
videos.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good times flying them though, man. I'm glad I don't fly them anymore. I've had like, what, 3, maybe 4 critical engine failures in King Airs. So
It's crazy.
Yeah, so
yeah,
like, yeah, Vince knows what VMC really is.
yeah. You know what? It's yeah, it's not as crazy as you think. It's just like, the thing about the King Airs, man, is that, like, when I would talk to other pilots about flying them, I'd say, look, like, flying a King Air is like getting back with a girl that cheated on you. Like, you're happy to be back together, but you never trust that broad. And I would tell them, it's like,
That's great, dude. That's hilarious.
well, you gotta watch the critical engine, man. And so it's like, if you just go out and look at the airplane, like, look at like a Caravan or an Otter, you have a big rectangular slow flying wing. You look at a King Air, it's a very short, stubby, sleek, fast flying wing, right? So think about this, man. And again, this is what I would tell other pilots. It's like, I would tell them, don't fly the numbers on this airplane. And what I meant by that is, like, look, in a 90, generally speaking, your rotation speed's about 92, 93 knots, right? So I always plan for, like, the worst case scenario, which is like, I rotate off the runway, I'm just about to suck the gear up, and I have a critical engine failure. At that point, those airplanes, I mean, the King Airs, you will get no pre-stall buffet. You'll get no stall warning. They'll just snap, roll, and cartwheel on you. But they'll literally they'll drop a wing, and the tail will come over on you, and you'll be upside down, looking backwards in your seat, you know, looking at the horizon upside down before you crash. So my remedy to that, like when I first started flying them, was push down on the yoke coming down the runway, and let the airplane know when I'm ready to get off the ground, which is usually about 110 knots. Pull it up into ground effect, tactical departure, suck the gear up. I very rarely use flaps in King Air, so you just don't need them. Put it in ground effect. At the end of a 3,100-foot runway, I'd be doing about 150, 160, just trim it up in it. But that was always my hedge against a critical engine failure. And 3 critical engine failures, I've never had one below 1,000 feet. Always coming off the runway. Always coming off the runway, like right at the V1 cut. So, and that's probably why I'm alive to tell the story.
That's kind of crazy to think about, huh? Is in that kind of area in the industry, you got to always be prepared for those different things happening, and it's not so simple as other engine failures. That sounds, I could totally understand what you're saying. Like, you don't have time to react. Where our airplanes, Scott, how much pounds of thrust does a 320 neo or a 320 neo produce?
It's 35,000 pounds per
All right,
engine.
35,000 pounds. Yeah,
70,000 total, something like that.
Yeah, 70,000 pounds of thrust, where, we could fly in the worst conditions possible out of Reno, Nevada, in the hottest of summer days, and we could still go and take off with 180 people or whatever.
Right.
But even a King Air, for example, like, the airplane is not necessarily built for those one in a billion time things happening. And it's like, there's so many different aspects that can happen to you flying that kind of airplane. And so, if you don't know what you're doing now, like you said, you probably wouldn't be here alive today to tell the story.
Yeah, yeah.
But it
This
forces
is
you to train and to know better,
Right. Right. And another thing I would tell pilots, like I would ask them, like, hey, I would paint this scenario, like the few times I have trained guys in King Airs or just having conversations with them. It's like, here's your scenario, man. You just got off the runway, you're sucking the gear up, and you lose an engine. What do you do? Oh, okay. Opposite rudder, trim to the heavy foot, identify, verify. Okay. What is that called? That's an engine out procedure. It's like, no, it's an engine securing, feathering procedure.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And I say, okay, let's back up for a second. And again, what I'm getting at here is that, like, they're not difficult airplanes to fly. It's just about going back to that pilot aviator thing. It's like, it's just
Yeah.
about your mindset, right? So I would walk the guys out to the airplane, when it shut down. And I say, look at your propellers right now. Okay. What angle are they at? Well, they're feathered. So your propeller blades are at 90-degree angles right now, correct? Yeah. Why? Well, because the engine's off. Okay. So let's go back to the scenario. You're a couple 100 feet off the runway, the gear's coming up, you lose an engine. Is that stressful scenario or not a stressful scenario? No, it's very stressful. Okay, if you go into this identify, verify, blah, 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 you're increasing your workload when your stress and anxiety level is already up. If that engine shuts down, what are those propeller blades going to do? They're not going to completely feather, but they'll go about 75, 80%, and the airplane will still fly. So it's like, just leave it. Leave it opposite rudder, trim to the heavy foot, push the nose down, clean the aircraft up, and get as much speed up as you can. Take a couple breaths, get your wits about you, and then figure out what your next move is. Okay, I got to get on the, crosswind to downwind. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Get on the
Yeah.
Fly your
downwind.
pattern.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Drop the gear, and then so. But again, it's a mentality. It's like, oh, and we've seen this in aviation. There's like several times actually. What was that incident in China? Was it a Dash 8 Q400? They got off the runway, lost an engine. They went into their, identify, verify, and cut the other good engine. You've
Oh,
seen that one,
yeah,
haven't you?
yeah.
Yeah, it was caught from a dash cam from a
Mm-hmm.
car, man. I mean, you see the thing, they cut the other engine and the thing's just clips the bridge and everybody's dead. So, but
It
anyways,
can
man.
happen quick, like you said. It's like when those high stress environments, in the airlines, whenever we shut down an engine, you're confirming with the other guy, being like, "Hey, are we about to shut down the only good engine we have?" Because you're not. I'm not going to say you're not thinking like properly, but it's probably one of the most stressful moments of your life. Just in our career with everything, you are literally in a life or death scenario right now. And so you're asking the other person, hey, are we making the right decision right now, to double check and trust and verify all those different things so that does not occur. But in those cases, you're single pilot, right? In
Yeah.
that case, so you definitely have to have like those measures on yourself where if you think it's like you said, if you're going to be way too task saturated, yeah, just focus on flying the airplane, right? Aviate,
Exactly.
navigate, communicate at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, like what I would tell again, like as part of this conversation, I would have with like newer King Air pilots. I'd say, hey, what's the procedure? Okay, identify, verify. No, it's NSFFA. I say, what is that? It's never stop flying the effing airplane.
That's right.
That's it. It's not aviate, navigate, communicate. It's like, no, NSFFA, man. Fly it all the way to the crash site.
Right.
That's right.
And again, it's just a certain mentality, man, of having to understand. It's like you're the only one in the cockpit, man. That's it. The people behind you, yeah, they might be crazy skydivers, but that's the number 5 thing they are. The first thing they are is somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's husband, somebody's wife, or somebody's father, et cetera, et cetera. So again, man, sorry, I hate to keep repeating myself, but it goes back to that, like, pilot versus professional aviator.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah.
man. Yeah, no, I mean, that was excellent. I know we're a little crunched on time today. John's got some
Okay.
stuff to do, and I got to get I got to fly again. I flew a red eye into Miami last night, which is why I got my Miami shirt on.
There you go.
Miami, man,
So,
Miami. I hear
yeah,
is it Miami? Where is it? It's somewhere in Florida where the real estate market's apparently crashing. So
Yeah, I heard that too, and
really,
I think it's mass exodus right now. Specifically, like in Tampa, it's pretty bad there right now.
yeah, yeah,
really, I did
yeah.
not hear about that. Oh,
Yeah, after I think it specifically, I don't know about a mass exodus, but I do know that sale homes are very flat, and a lot of people are trying to leave. I think people, after COVID, really or during COVID, were like, screw California, I want to go to Florida, and then they realized that their house can, be flooded by a hurricane or whatever, and they're like, all right, that was fun, but let's go somewhere better or
Yeah. Are you from
different.
California?
No,
Where are you
no,
from?
Minnesota.
Okay, Minnesota. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. The Twin Cities.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
And spent some time down in Arizona. And now I'm in Georgia, Atlanta, south of the airport.
Interesting. Okay, so you're hubbed in Atlanta.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, I got to get going here, but Vince, you got to come back on. We'll go as long as you want because there's like we just scratched the surface. Like I have so many other questions for you, but I appreciate you coming on, man, and getting to know you. What I know about Scott's friends are y'all are a bunch of nomads going all around the freaking country and the world,
Yeah.
and it's the most interesting experience talking with you guys and learning about your professional past and your journeys and just who you guys are. So. I'm going to get out of here, but you guys continue on for as long as you want. And I'll see you guys next week, okay?
Cool, man.
All
Have
right,
a good one,
John.
man.
We'll see you, bud.
All right. See you, Scott. Fly safe. Bye.
Thanks,
All
man.
right, brother. Ciao. You guys got a good thing going, man, and it's cool. And like, in aviation, man, it's like aviation's like, how do I say this? It's very type A, and it's like you got to watch what you say and this and that. And so these type of conversations where we can speak openly about stuff like this is like it's not only good, man, but I think it's something that the industry needs, And I hope sort of the next rendition of one of these conversations will be about pilot mental health and how the FAA does or doesn't handle that, because that's a huge thing that we're seeing right now, man.
Yeah, I agree. We'll definitely have to do an episode where we expand on those issues because at least we're at a point where the FAA is starting to acknowledge it. They've had to, and they just, they made that change where now you can go get counseling for depression, anxiety, anything, and you won't lose your medical anymore.
I did not know about that. I did not know
Yeah,
about that. Okay.
yeah. Sometime within the last year, they came out and they changed the rules, and so now just generalized anxiety, just normal depression, things like that. You can go see like an LMFT or just like a counselor and just work through it with them, and not have to worry about losing your career over it.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, so I'm sure there's still plenty of people that don't report, but you can report now without worry.
Okay.
Which
I
is
didn't
good to
realize
know.
that, man. I had no idea, man. No, man, I got to keep up more on some of the new regs coming out, but
Yeah, it's getting better. It's they're moving at the speed of government. I'm really hoping with Doge dismantling the bureaucracy that could help streamline some of the changes the FAA really needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you shouldn't. I mean, people are people, right? Like you should be able to just be a normal person and not worry about it ruining your career. Like,
exactly, man. And
yeah.
that's sort of the irony of aviation, man, is like, we obviously we fly a lot, and it's like at any given it's almost like being a professional football player or something like that. At any given point in time, you could have an injury. In our case, it's not an injury, but one flight, the next flight could be your last flight, man, and you do something, you lose your license and you're done,
Yep.
So,
Absolutely,
or lose
man.
your whatever.
Yep.
So, but anyways, man, like I said, man, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, we'll do another episode where we have more time to expand on it because John's very inquisitive, so I'm sure he has a million questions now he wants to expand on with you.
Sure, man.
But yeah,
Anytime.
appreciate you coming on, man.
No problem, man. I appreciate
And
that.
I'm so impressed with your lack of profanity over an hour.
I figured you'd probably post to YouTube or something like that, man. So I'd keep it a little bit clean,
Yeah, dude. Well, thanks for coming on.
No problem,
Appreciate
brother.
it.
Thanks for having me, man. We'll be in
Good to
touch. Keep in
talk
touch,
to you
man. All
again.
right.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.